Hello, my name is Chrissy Hodges. I just want to give a shout out to the Mighty for having me on this wonderful month of mental health awareness, and with all these kick-ass advocates. I just feel so honored to be part of this community, and I love getting to know the people that are part of this community and all of your stories and perseverance, and even when we're suffering, just knowing that we're not alone, really to me just is the way to recovery. Today I am going to talk about my lived experience with obsessive compulsive disorder and the type of OCD that I have, which is called pure OCD. It's a nickname, and I'll get into a little bit about that. And I also want to talk about emotional recovery. This is what really kicked me into high gear when it came to being able to live in recovery and understand that I can live successfully with this illness. So first and foremost, and thank you everybody. I can see you down there. Hello, Sage. And I just want to say that I'm going to be making note if you write questions or whatever, and hopefully I can address those a little bit later. But I definitely want to get through the story really quick and talk about what emotional recovery is. So really quickly, I'm sure you know what obsessive compulsive disorder is. And typically people think that OCD is all about hand washing and organization. And yes, there are absolutely people who have these obsessions and compulsions, and they're devastating and they're torturous and tormenting. But there's another type of OCD that's really common that a lot of people don't know about. And even in the professional world, people don't know about it. And it often gets misdiagnosed, which can make symptoms worse and can prolong recovery. And it's very devastating. And this is what like I described earlier, it's called pure OCD. That's the nickname of it. What it is it's comprised of obsessions. OCD has three parts: obsessions, compulsions, and anxiety. The type of obsessions that people get when they have pure OCD, they are shameful, embarrassing. They're typically going to be sexual and violent, blasphemous in nature, fear of getting certain illnesses, fear of vomiting or blood or things like that. But the difference is that the compulsions are mental. And so people can have these type of obsessions for years and years and years, and no one will ever even know it, because it's so shameful and embarrassing, especially the sexual and violent intrusive thoughts, that people will keep it hidden. They're scared to tell people about it, because they're scared, if I say this out loud, that might mean it's real. If I say it out loud, maybe it's true. Some examples are fear that you're going to turn into a violent killer. And remember, these are the fear of. These are not people's traits or what they want or desire. Oh, look, someone just said the fear of vomiting. I have that too. I mean, I'm not excited that we both have it, but it's so nice to know other people have it. So the fear of turning into a violent killer, fear that they will commit violence, like they'll snap and hurt someone, hurt a family member, an animal, fear of turning into, or fear of turning gay. And this has nothing to do with like whether you think being gay is wrong or right. It's just you all of a sudden have this fear of, what if I turn and I'm forced to be with the sex that I'm not attracted to? The opposite of that would be someone who is gay, fearing they're going to turn straight. And you might be thinking to yourself, whatever, you either know or you don't, and it's not that big of a deal. But for the person that's suffering with it, this is you can't prove or disprove in your head, and you're looking everywhere for signs and all this, and you can find signs to prove and disprove just about anything, just so you know. So so there's fear of worry that you're attracted or you're going to be violent towards your family, fear that you might turn into a pedophile, fear that you might hurt someone with your car or something like that, fear of contracting AIDS, fear of contracting other illnesses. So you can get my drift. There are things that we all have intrusive thoughts about, but people who have this type of OCD, they get stuck. And they get stuck in these obsessions for years. And OCD is ego dystonic. And so it's not part of your character, your desires, your wants. But you can't stop. And the compulsions take up hours of your day. And you may not even know you're doing them. Mental compulsions are avoidance. They're reassurance seeking, ruminating, things like that. So I just wanted to give you a little explanation really quick before I get into my story. And I'm not going to go on and on about my story. If you want to know more about my story, you can order my book, Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, although it's backwards here, but by Chrissy Hodges. My symptoms started for me when I was 8. I was a normal, everyday kid. I liked to ride bikes and play Atari, and I mean, seriously, within a second, my life changed. I all of a sudden went to worrying about vomit every moment of every day. I did compulsions all day, every day, worrying that I was going to get sick. This has started at 8 years old. At times when things would get bad, OCD tends to ebb and flow. So when it would get really bad, I would be doing compulsions 10 to 12 hours a day. Avoidance, ruminating, stuff like that. And then when I got into my teenage years, I developed sexual intrusive thoughts. I did have a few violent ones and some blasphemous fear that I was going to, what if I started worshiping the devil, or what if I didn't believe in God, things like that. I was very religious. And I also had scrupulosity, which is when religion becomes intertwined with your obsessions and your compulsions. So I actually believed that God was punishing me with these bad thoughts and bad feelings, which is anxiety, the bad feelings. That was my worldview. I grew up religious. My dad is a minister. And so, we use our worldview to make sense of what's going on with this. And at 8 years old, I didn't know what else to think other than I must have done something wrong and I'm being punished. And I was too scared to tell my parents. So I kept it to myself. And I just thought, as long as I manage this, I'll be okay. The problem is that you cannot manage OCD forever. Depression hits, exhaustion hits, other things hit. And as I got up and through my teenage years, I would go through these periods of depression. And of course I was all, I've done something wrong to offend God. It never crossed my mind that I was depressed. Never crossed my mind I had a mental illness, because I wasn't one of those people. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't grow up thinking that anybody I knew could be mentally ill. Like, those are like Jack Nicholson kind of people, right? I mean, not the actor, but, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And so I didn't tell anybody. And even, Rudy. Hello, Rudy. There's your shout out. Thank you for all the hearts. And yes, OCD does include perfectionism for that comment right there. Absolutely. That is a type of OCD. So, and subtype, OCD is all one thing, but there are different themes and subtypes. So, but they're all treated the same way. I'll get to that. So anyway, I fell into a deep depression when I was 20, and I couldn't manage it anymore. And I just thought, I guess this is it for me. I couldn't manage these sexual intrusive thoughts. My body was reacting to them all the time. Yes, I was getting the groinal syndrome. If anyone is interested in knowing about that, I'll post a video later that I did about it. But your body starts reacting to these thoughts, and you're terrified because you're worried that because you're reacting that they're real, and you're scared. And I was scared. So suicide seemed like my only option. And honestly, I was so... After 4 months of severe depression, I just wanted relief. I didn't want to die. Like with suicide, whenever I'm suicidal or I have suicidal thoughts, I don't want to die. But I'm just so desperate for relief. It's so painful. But I didn't know I could reach out for help. Now I do. But then I didn't. I really thought that I was being punished by a higher power. So I attempted suicide, and I'm not going to go into details about it. It was pretty gruesome, but I did survive. And I ended up in an inpatient locked facility. And it was horrible, y'all. I mean, if any of you have spent time in an inpatient lockdown facility, it's awful. And I thought, I don't deserve to be here. I'm suffering. I'm still depressed. And now all the things that bring me comfort were taken away from me. And I'm in this room, and they wouldn't let me shut the door because, I was on suicide watch, and I was scared of all the people in there because, some of the behaviors scared me, and the staff was mean, and they're shoving medication down my throat. And I'm like, why am I taking this? First of all, I was like, I'm not mentally ill. F all of you. And after a couple weeks, I started opening up to the other patients, and I've said this before in the video, and they turned out to be peers. I realized that these were people that were normal people, and they just had mental illness, and they were just ill at that time, but they made me laugh. They had families and jobs and hobbies, and they really helped me to start healing. My medical recovery came. There are two parts to my recovery. My medical recovery came when the medication kicked in, and I got relief from my symptoms. I also relapsed a year later when I went off medication because I was like, I'm smart. I can control this. Yeah, that didn't work. Within like 3 or 4 weeks, I was suicidal again. And then I advocated for myself, and I found a therapist that specialized in OCD. I was lucky. It was 1998. It was AOL dial-up internet. And I found this dude. Sorry, he's not a dude. He's a doctor in New York. And his name is Dr. Phillipson. And he treats this type of OCD. It's the first time I had seen anything about it. I was so excited. I did therapy. It eradicated all of my symptoms. I was ecstatic. But that was my medical recovery. But then I fell into a deep personal stigma. I mean, I felt okay with my symptoms, but I went into this anger and sadness and loss, grieving the person that I could have been without this illness. What could I have been? Who could I have been? Where did my childhood go? It was all taken away by this horrible monster of an illness. Who was I now? Now that I can't trust my brain, now that I don't even know what my perception of the world is because my brain could be lying, I was scared. And so I just ran. I went to Colorado, which is where I still am. And for 12 years, I did the best that I could. I had this underlying simmering of anger. Who will hire me? Who will love me? I hid everything from everybody. The only people that knew were my family. I didn't tell any of my friends. I was so scared. If they knew I had attempted suicide, if they knew that I was in an inpatient facility, they knew I had these horrible intrusive thoughts at one point. I was scared I would be rejected and judged, and I would be alone, and I was so lonely. I was so lonely. So after 12 years, I moved down to Denver. I had a business. I brought it down to Denver. And this is what started my emotional recovery, which I think many people have to go through. It was kicked off by a relapse. Change and loss are a trigger for me. So when I moved, I relapsed completely. I had violent intrusive thoughts, relationship OCD. I was so ill. But I had to run a clothing store. I could not take time off work. And so I had to go to work every day. And I just thought, I'm going to get through this. I got back on meds. I went back in therapy. And that's when it hit me, y'all. That's when I was like, look, OCD is a lifelong illness. Now, it for me, I had a medical recovery, so I know how to manage it. Even though I relapsed, I knew how to get back on my feet. But I had to accept that this is what I have. And it's not going away. So I can either be angry and I can be sad and miserable and woe is me. I wasn't really woe is me, but I can either hide it from the world or I can look at it as this isn't who I am. Chrissy is not pure OCD, sexual and violent intrusive thoughts. And OCD is not Chrissy. And I had to get to the point where I was like, I don't stop and then it begins, or I stop and then it, I had to get to that point, and that's when it happened. And I said, I'm tired of not talking about it. I'm tired of living in shame. I'm tired of worrying everybody's going to leave me if they find out. I was like, if they leave me, I don't care. And I started talking out about it. Nobody was. I couldn't find anything about sexual and violent intrusive thoughts. So I started talking out. I started speaking out. And y'all, it was hard. I cried the first few speeches I did. I was so scared. But then a funny thing happened. When people found out what I have been through, they came to me and said, thank you for sharing. Let me tell you what I've been through. And I was like, oh my God, we're the same. And we can have this safe, sacred space together of zero judgment. And then from there, it just grew and grew. The more times I talked, the more people I saw, and I started to remember my peers in the hospital, and I started to see that we're everywhere. And we're all scared sometimes, and we're all angry, and we're all sad, and we can be, and we should be, because these illnesses are hard. They're tough. And anybody that perseveres with a mental illness has got such resiliency and strength. And that's something that society doesn't tell us. So if you need to hear it, I'm telling you right now. We have such resiliency and strength, more so than so many people will ever have. So emotional recovery started for me when I was able to see that this illness is part of who I am and my journey, but it doesn't have to define me. And I can still live a full life with the people that come to me knowing who I am. And I don't have to go chasing after people, hoping that they'll love me even though I'm mentally ill. I didn't have to do that anymore. Because sharing my story made the shame melt all the way. And it took a while. I mean, it took several years for it all to. And there are still times. Sometimes I get scared. We all get scared. But we all just have to keep pushing. And here at Mental Health on the Mighty is a community of people who just get it. You know, I don't have the disorders that you do. In some of you may not have OCD, but that doesn't mean we don't understand how lonely they can be. We don't understand how shameful and embarrassing and guilty we feel, you know, that we put people through stuff and our family had to deal with this and this and this and this. But I'm going to tell you, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters are the people that get it, that can walk alongside us and say, me too. So that's my message today, is that recovery is fluid and it's ongoing. And whatever stage of recovery you're in, there's somebody that can walk with you right now and that can say, me too. So thank you for having me on here. I hope this was helpful. It has been a long journey for myself, and I know it's been a long journey for you, and we're all still in it together. I do want to end with peer support. This is what I do, and I'm not just promoting myself, but how important peer support is in working toward recovery and the emotional piece of it. If it wasn't for the peer support that I found, you know, after I started speaking out and found people that could help and tell me that they understood and that it was okay for me to be sad and upset and grieve what I had been through, I would never have been able to reach recovery. That's why I'm doing what I do now. I do peer support individually for people. It doesn't matter what illness you have. I do have OCD and I do peer support for OCD, but I also worked in the state institution here at Colorado for a year and a half. So I've worked with every single illness. And what I do is I just meet with people. I meet them where they're at. And I use my lived experience to support and normalize what they go through. So I do sessions with people, and you can find out more about that at ChrissyHodges.com or at treatmentforocd.com. That website in general is for helping people find resources and peer support with resources. But ChrissyHodges.com will definitely find out more about that. But I suggest whether it's me or someone else or anyone, find a peer, find people that can walk with you. It will make the journey so much easier. And you don't have to do it alone. It is lonely and it's hard to talk to people, especially if you have what I was talking about. And not that, you know, ours is worse than anybody else, but I can speak from my experience. When you have sexual and violent intrusive thoughts, you're so scared to say it out loud. But saying it out loud is freeing to people who will meet you with empathy and compassion. So with that, I'm going to close out. And I'll be happy if you want to post questions underneath. I will come back through for the next couple hours and answer questions. And just want to give a huge thanks for having me on here and for tuning in and just for fighting the journey every day, fighting the battle. I'm right there with you, and I'm not going away anytime soon. Hopefully, mental health of the mighty won't make me. Anyway, happy Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you for being here. You're part of a wonderful community. And by the way, your story can make a difference. So if you want to start speaking out, please, please, please do it, because you have a voice and you have a story that can impact, help, and change people's lives as well. Thank you for having me. Please feel free to comment, and I'll go back through and try to answer everything I can. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you next month. And happy Mental Health Awareness Month. Bye.